Hello and welcome to Distraction. I'm your host, Dr. Ned Hallowell, and we are very fortunate to have our friend, colleague, mentor, and just all-around wise woman, Jessica McCabe. I make her sound older than she is. She's very young, but also very wise. From How to ADHD. That's her website as well as her YouTube handle. She has an amazing YouTube following, like 360,000 people. So if you want to be the 360,001th, go to How to ADHD on the YouTube channel. And she's joining us for a special episode in honor of our sponsor, Landmark College, the best in the world in beautiful Putney, Vermont, a truly paradisical setting. It is the college of choice for students who learn differently. Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont. Well, it's always nice to have you with us, Jessica. Thank you so much for coming in, and I know you always have a topic in mind. What topic have you picked for today?
I do always have a topic in mind, and this one I really want to pick your brain on. This one's on hyperfocus. So it's a topic I haven't done a video on yet. I'm still in the process of researching it, but I certainly have experienced hyperfocus and counted on it a lot while I was in college and, in the workplace. And I just wanted to talk to you about it because I know you have some unique perspectives about hyperfocus. I just kind of wanted to ask you just your thoughts on it.
Well, it is one of the special talents we have in the world of ADHD. Most people think, attention deficit, it's a deficit. Well, it's not a deficit at all. What we have is an abundance of attention. And then the question is to control it. And when we do control it, it can become laser beam intense, hence hyperfocus. The question is how to do that. And usually the combination of three elements will create hyperfocus. The combination of structure, motivation, and novelty. A perfect example is a video game. Highly structured, full of novelty, surprises, and there's a natural motivator. You want to beat the game. So you put those three elements together, you get hyperfocus. It's good to know, like if you're a teacher, that you want to work on those variables. If there's too much structure, the class gets boring. If there's too much novelty, the class gets confusing. So you want to sort of have your finger on the pulse of the group, and when they're getting overstimulated, introduce structure, drills, repetition. And when they're getting bored, bring in something new, a new idea, a new concept, a joke, something that's bright and shiny to grab their attention. And then you hope they're motivated. Yeah,
I've heard hyperfocus described as a superpower. I've also heard it described as kind of a double-edged sword. I fall more on the double-edged sword thing. But, as I'm learning more about hyperfocus, it's just really interesting to me. Because, it's on one hand, it's like basically that we, it's not that we can't pay attention. It's not that we don't have enough attention. It's like you said, it's this kind of an abundance of attention and we have trouble like focusing it basically. But then when something does capture our attention, it's almost like we can't pull ourselves away. And so there are times when that's been really, really helpful for me in my career. Like early on when I started making YouTube videos, I'm pretty sure it's the only way that I was able to get them done because I would just get so immersed in it and absorbed in it that I wouldn't come up for air until it was finished. And that was great. It was really helpful. Other times, I'd get into, I don't know what the difference is exactly between hyperfocus and flow. I feel like flow is kind of like the kind of hyperfocus you want to be in. But I would get into that, like even waiting tables. I'd get into a really good flow of like, okay, now I'm taking care of this table and now this table and now this table. And I just really feel like in the zone, I guess. But there are other times where I would just like get really into like a video game. I'd get really absorbed into The Sims or into like a Netflix series and be at the point where I wasn't even really enjoying it anymore, but I still couldn't stop. And that to me is like, it's not as positive an experience of hyperfocus.
That's like binge watching.
Yeah, like binge watching. Or when I was stuck into a video game, I had a friend come over and like I almost didn't even register that she was there. I could not stop playing that video game. And I've heard like people don't even recognize that there's like a fire alarm going off downstairs because they're so focused on what it is that they're doing. So I think that as somebody with ADHD, like I used to think that hyperfocus was the only way to focus, because I really only had two kinds of focus. I had like, I am not able to focus at all. And then like, I'm so intensely focused, it's hard to pull me away. And so I'm trying to aim for like more of a nice flow now, like not so deep that I can't stop. So one of the things that I'm doing is setting timers and stuff, and like just doing little check-ins with myself. Like, am I working on what I want to be working on? But it's such a tough thing to manage. It really is, because it's not like we can choose what to hyperfocus on. It's not like, okay, well, I know I need to do homework, so let me sit down and hyperfocus on my homework. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Something has to grab your attention. But I think one thing you can do is sort of, as you go on in life, become aware of what tends to grab your attention, and try to do those things, when you're wanting to hyperfocus. And because boredom is our kryptonite. We just cannot do boredom. We can't. It's not that we won't. We can't. So as much as boredom is our kryptonite, stimulation is our go-to. We're drawn to stimulus the way, a flower turns toward the sun.
Yeah, no, I definitely do that. I've noticed, like, I tend to write episodes for my channel that are related to something I'm struggling with at the moment, so that I have that, like, interest in learning about it, and so then I can get through these really dense research papers because I'm personally invested. Like, there's something there to catch my interest. Right. Whereas if it's something that doesn't feel at all relevant to me at the time, it's really hard for me to focus at all. But college students have to do that a lot, right? They have to like pay attention to things and focus on things that aren't at all engaging to them at the moment. Like, what do you suggest for that?
Well, if you have ADHD, you should definitely get on medication, because that can make a big difference in terms of your ability to deal with the kryptonite that I call boredom. If you have ADHD, give medication a try. Short of that, try caffeine. Meditate if you're so inclined. It really, really does help. And take what my friend John Rady calls brain breaks. Stand up, stretch, walk around. Don't think you can just flog your brain to work endlessly. You need to feed it. You need to rest it and stimulate it. So do try to build in moments that are stimulating. And if you've got to do a really boring paper, build into that quick little conversations with someone who you find exciting, or a quick voyage to a website you really like. Just don't stay there. That's the problem.
I was going to say, that's the tricky part. Like, I know one thing that I've learned to do is not make a boring task compete with something that's more interesting. So, like, if I have Netflix available to me, I'm not, and a series I'm really excited about, if I watch an episode before I do homework, like, it's going to be really hard for me to transition to that homework. So I try personally as much as possible to use that stuff as a reward, not like make my brain have to choose like, do I want to play video games or do I want to work on this research paper? Like, no, you have to do the research paper and then you get the video games.
Exactly. Eat your spinach before you have ice cream. That's another basically good principle. This talk with the wonderful Jessa McCabe is brought to you by Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, the school for students who learn differently. What else do we have to say about this topic? Focus, hyperfocus, lack of focus, boredom, stimulation. It's sort of right at the heart of what makes ADHD different, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I was reading a research paper and they were talking about how people with ADHD generally like have an actual aversion to things that are to tasks that are repetitive, boring, lengthy. It's not just we prefer to be entertained. Like, of course we do. Everybody prefers to be entertained, but our brains actually have this almost painful response to boredom and to having to wait and do things that are repetitive, that take a long time, to wait a long time for results, that kind of thing. Like, even waiting in line can be hard for us. So yeah, I agree with you that it's a good idea to find ways to like add stimulation to things. I know another thing that helps me is building in transition time. So, transitioning, it's really difficult for me to stop doing something that's engaging to my brain and start doing something that isn't.
Right.
But if I just make it, okay, at this time I will stop doing the engaging thing, and then I'll be bored for 5 minutes, and then I'll start doing the thing that I need to work on. It's a lot easier. And same, like, you know, I know a lot of people with ADHD, parents have probably experienced this. If you interrupt your kid, you know, who's engaged in something they're really interested in, to tell them even to go to dinner, like they can respond with anger sometimes. And I think part of it is because we were getting this, you know, incredible reward for our brain that we don't often get, because we don't usually get that level of stimulation. So when we do, it's almost like we need it. We're like, yes, give it to me. I've been bored all day. But part of it is also, it's so hard sometimes for us to get into a zone where we are focused, that when that's interrupted, it's not just like, okay, no problem, I'll go do this thing and then I'll come back and focus. It's like, well, now it's going to take me 3 hours to get into this zone again. So I think, you know, for parents and friends, like, just, I beg of you to be understanding when we have a hard time coming out of hyperfocus, because sometimes it's that we are so focused, it's painful to rip ourselves away. And sometimes it's like, we worked so hard to get there, just to understand that, I guess. Yeah,
no, that's a good way of putting it. Well, once again, the time has zipped away when I'm talking to Jessica McCabe.
Thank you. This was a cool discussion. This is, again, something I'm still exploring, but I think it's a really important topic for us to understand.
It sure is. And go to howtoadhd.com. That's howtoadhd.com to watch all of Jessica's amazing videos filled with tips, tricks, and insights about the ADHD brain. And of course, a very special thank you to our sponsor, Landmark College, for making this episode possible. Visit lcdistraction.org, that's LC for Landmark College, distraction.org, to learn how Landmark College supports students with ADHD and other learning differences. Find your place at Landmark College. I can tell you, many people have. I actually have an honorary degree from Landmark College, so I feel like I'm a graduate. Anyway, Distraction is created by Soundscrape Media. Our producer is the inimitable, loyal, stalwart, and so hardworking Sarah Guertin. And our recording engineer is the amazingly talented and also very hardworking Pat Keogh. I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell. Thank you so much for joining me.